This one here is going to be a little bit controversial because I'm going to speak about Commissioner Oettinger and the various things that he has said. I'll basically follow the format of beginning with the good news and then moving on to the bad news. Well, the very best news are some of the controversial statements he's made are actually not so bad when you think about them a little bit. For an example, to say that he likes Donald Duck better than Donald Trump, well, that's fair enough, I think. To say that he would commit suicide if he were married to Frauke Petry, the leader of the AfD, well, why not? You know, it's a little bit sarcastic, but I have been known to make statements like that myself, and heavens knows I got in trouble with HR over those statements. And even some of the things that he said about the Chinese delegation really aren't a problem. I mean, to say these are 9 men, 1 party, no democracy, what? It's only a fact that he's mentioning. There's nothing wrong with that. He should be allowed to say the truth. Now, I feel anyway that there are far too many laws in Europe that restrict freedom of expression. I really think that citizens should be allowed to say and write very, very nearly everything that they think and feel. There'd be just very few exceptions, you know, clearly criminal things. I sort of follow Voltaire in this. I may disagree with everything that you say, but I will defend to the death your right to say it. Although I would hate to die for Commissioner Oettinger. So the main objection against his statements about the Chinese there would be that, you know, everyone knows he's a commissioner of the EU Commission. And so whenever he opens his mouth, people feel that he's somehow or other speaking for the EU. This isn't really fair, but it's a fact. So he would probably need to be a lot more careful with his statements than I am, who am just the leader of a small trade union and a representative in a staff committee. And you need to perhaps take this into account. Oettinger was making a pun in German. He was speaking about Schlitzohren and Schlitzaugen. Now, of course, that pun doesn't work when you translate it into English or other languages. I'm pretty sure it doesn't work when you translate it into Mandarin or into Cantonese. So, you know, he took a false step there. I would hold up as a good alternative example the way a really excellent professional comedian handled this sort of a thing, the great Richard Pryor, who was very good at extremely edgy humor about racism. And one of my favorite Richard Pryor routines goes about like this. He's pretending to be an English teacher teaching a class of Vietnamese refugees newly arrived in the United States. And so he says, "Good morning, class. Today I'm going to teach you the most important word in the English language. And that word is nigger." The Vietnamese, nigger. No, try again. Nigger. No. It doesn't have an L at the end, it has an R. Nigger. Nigger. No, you're going to need more practice. I tell you what, when the nigger kicks your ass, then you know you got it right. And something very similar applies to slant eyes. I mean, I would be the last to intervene if some kung fu master came and kicked Oettinger's ass. I would just say, look, you brought your troubles upon yourself. But now we're going to pass to things which are a little bit more serious. There was a case in German history, the case of Hans Filbinger. Hans Filbinger, under Hitler, joined both the Nazi Party and the SA, the Sturmabteilung, the stormtroopers. Now, Oettinger excused himself for this later on. He said, yeah, but I was a lawyer. I wanted to keep working in the legal profession. And this is plausible. Millions of Germans did things like that. But the thing is, not all Germans did things like that. Some Germans went just the other way, and they risked not only their careers, but even their lives. And plenty of Germans lost their lives trying to oppose Hitler as best they could. So that's a little bit stale. There's a little bit of a bitter aftertaste. And it's a fact that actually Hans Filbinger apparently managed to save a couple of defendants in front of Nazi military courts from the death penalty. So that's quite good, but it's also a fact that he was involved in imposing capital verdicts even early in the year 1945, that is to say, right before the Third Reich collapsed. The most famous case here was the case of Gröger, who was a sailor in Norway, and he tried to defect and flee to neutral Sweden because, you know, he didn't want to die as the last German sailor in a lost war. And unfortunately, the military police caught him, and he was brought to trial, and the prosecutor was Hans Filbinger, and he managed to obtain a death verdict, and as according to military custom, he had to supervise then the execution of Gröger, who was in his early 20s, you know. Well, here's where we come to Oettinger now. Differently from poor sailor Gröger, Hans Filbinger lived to be 93, and when he died, Oettinger held the eulogy. And the unfortunate thing is, the eulogy, he painted Filbinger as though he had been a total opponent of the Third Reich. And that simply isn't true. It's just not true. I really think the fair verdict about Filbinger would be to say he was 51% Nazi and 49% anti-Nazi. But, you know, he was, to try to paint him as a resistance hero, no. That's very disrespectful to those Germans who gave their lives. And it gets still a little bit worse. Oettinger used to be Commissioner of Energy, and so he commissioned a study on the subsidies for energy. And, you know, the experts went to work, they gathered the documents and the evidence, so on, added up the numbers, so on, and what it turned out was that actually coal and nuclear energy both each attract more government subventions, more government money, more subsidies than do the renewable energies such as wind and sun. And so what Oettinger did was, when he got the final draft and it was getting ready to go to the printers, he simply knocked out the numbers about nuclear subsidies and carbon dioxide subsidies. And this is something which I feel is much, much, much more serious, because the taxpayers had paid for that study, and he simply had no right to knock out relevant facts which are important for the citizens to know in order to take an intelligent democratic decision. I mean, if the government decides the flow, controls the flow of information to the voters, then we're already beginning to edge away a little bit from real democracy. It's becoming sort of like a managed democracy, the kind of thing that Putin likes to do. So this is something that I would see much more seriously in the behavior of Commissioner Oettinger. We should, of course, be under no illusions. Mr. LuxLeaks and Ms. Panama Papers are clinging tightly to their very lucrative posts. And can you hear the ex-president of the EU Commission? Can you hear him laughing all the way to the Goldman Sachs Bank? So we're going to have Commissioner Oettinger with us for a while. The thing for staff to remember is this: there are whole tsunamis of disrespect and even contempt crashing over our heads. It's true. It's, you know, we don't have a very good press, but we should always remember This is not due to the way the average colleague does his or her job. It's due to the bad behavior by a couple of people at the very top. And those people were appointed by the same politicians who are now screaming their heads off against us. So we ourselves should remain calm and confident and proud. We should remember what Winston Churchill said, when going through hell, keep going. Thank you for listening.